Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
And it is once again 7 o'clock, and Saturday night's all right for talking about comics. So we have assembled once more the mighty LCS guys to the round table to talk about just what's going on in the industry, specifically on the front lines at the point of sale or behind the back offices where the comics are being made. So we've got the perfect combination for that tonight. I'd like to welcome to the stream with me first, Mr. Brian Cook from Austin, Texas, Blast Beat ATX. Sir, how are things for you today?
Tired. It's been a long day for a Saturday.
Oh yeah, it's been Saturday since Thursday for me, so I can relate. So we're going to be talking with you about the aftermarket. The eBay market is your specialty. You got tons and tons of back issues behind you there. Probably what, 6 metric tons worth of comics there?
Off the top of my head, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 long boxes are up here, something like that, maybe more.
That's heavy stuff. Very cool. And we have, Overstreet contributor, Mr. Michael Tierney from Little Rock, Arkansas. Michael, how are things in your neck of the woods today?
Oh, doing real good. I like that Uncle Scrooge reference you had just a minute ago there.
I didn't even know I did it.
Everything's great down here. It's a little bit rainy and cool, which is unusual for July.
Yeah, well, it's usually 110 in Arkansas about this time of year, and it stays that way till October, and then it's road construction. There's only 2 seasons. It's hot and road construction in Arkansas. So, and you are doing you had, for those who are watching, you had 2 brick and mortar businesses that you shut down pretty much due to the COVID situation and the diamond shut down and the employees not having a place to go to work. But you're in the mail order business now, so you're still keeping your customers happy by ordering what they want and just mailing it out to them. You're a subscription guy.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I was doing it for like 38 years, and when they shut it down, it just scared my employees. I was still open, but they all thought, the comic book industry, this thing's about to go kaput. We need to find other jobs. And so here, all of a sudden, I'd taken on all these writing contracts, and all of a sudden, I had 2 stores and just me to operate them. I mean, you can't. I tried for a while to be at 2 places at one time, but that just wasn't workable. And see what the publishers were doing. It's like, yeah, I can take care of my customers better another way without all the expense overhead and having a heart attack while I'm doing it.
Absolutely. You don't have to order as many books anymore either.
Yeah, don't have all that overhead. Yeah, that's great.
Yep. All right. Well, somebody who knows what's going on behind the scenes in the comics industry, we have with us here Mr. Rich Perotta. Rich has a book. Yeah, there he is.
What?
Rich has a book on Indiegogo, our Kickstarter. Hadn't moved it to Indiegogo yet.
It's going to move to Indiegogo shortly.
Cool.
Here it is.
Yes, the INCANTESI. Let me give you a big shot on that one there, so people can see that cover.
I was hoping that it was up like right side up. I just wanted to be sure about that.
It is right side up. Now we can't speak Italian.
Excellent. Well, INCANTESI is actually an incorrect word. It's a diminutive of the word. It's a diminutive of the word incantesimi, which is really essentially just a loose translation for magic spell.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put all those letters on the cover because that would confuse me. So I just decided to chop off a few M's.
Plus,
and it looks cool. I don't know.
It comes out sort of like Mississippi that way, and I always put too many IPPIs on it.
Yeah.
With incantesimi.
And it's one of those big Italian things where it's like every single word, even if it means cat, it's like 5 syllables or something like that, because that's all they do is just repeat the syllables over and over again whenever they decide to translate anything. And being Italian, I could say that. So
that's right.
Italians. That's just my own ethnicity and stuff like that. So hello, gentlemen. How are you all today?
Good to have you here.
Doing great.
I'm honored to be here. Honored to be here with you fine, upstanding young citizens. God damn it.
Rich and I have talked in the past too about your former life at Marvel. and I was marveling at the goings on. I did not know, for instance, that there was an art corrections department that he was working in, and all these people fixing art that don't get credit.
I don't know if they have it anymore. Yeah, I don't know if they have it anymore. It was called. It was affectionately called Romita's Raiders, and John Romita was the person who started it all. And it's where they would take people with decent enough talent, but not quite there, and try and hone their skills in order to become future Marvel artists. I happen to be one of them. And and it was like it's a temp job, really, or back then it was a temp job. It was like a year long. You spend a year there, you correct some of the art that comes in, and back in 1994, it was desperately needed. And if you're good enough, they hire you as a freelancer. And I was good enough, I guess. I don't know why they thought so. And I was working at Marvel as a freelancer from 95 to about 2004. And then I stopped for a bit, and then I went over to DC Comics for a couple of years. Now, all that time, I was an inker, and I finally got fed up with inking. I decided to become a penciler who inks his own work. And I've been doing that in the indie circuit for about 7 years. And I stayed in the indie circuit because it was a lot more rewarding creatively. And through being in the indie circuit, I learned how to self-publish my own work. And that book that I just showed you is a culmination of that. And I'm still in the indie circuit, and I don't think I'll ever go back to Marvel or DC unless they offer me a contract with a lot of money or some crap like that.
Well, yeah, they're not going to do that. I mean, what was it? Shane Davis.
Well, that's not nice to say. What, are you saying that I'm not good enough?
No, I'm saying that they don't have the money. They don't have the money. You have enough money to buy DC Comics right now if they would put themselves up for sale.
No, but what you just said is also a common story in the music world of people from all shapes and sizes and styles. They sign the big major label contract. They do the big tour. It's not what it's cracked up to be, and they go back to the independent route.
It's not. It really isn't. You know, I mean, it's nice to have that quote unquote pedigree, but it's really not what a lot of people think it is. It's a grind just like anything else, and it's a grind that you have a little bit of like creative leverage when it comes to like working whenever you want, but you still have to follow a template. You still have to draw a character a certain way. And with all due respect, I mean, a certain wall crawler that is owned by a certain company with a mouse logo on it, how many times are you going to draw that thing swinging through a friggin' New York City? I mean, it's been done so many times. I don't think there's a possible angle that hasn't been covered yet when it comes to a perspective shot. It's like, all right, now what? Oh, what is it called for the script? Wait, he's swinging on his web through the buildings in New York City? That's exciting. Wow. And who's he facing? Doc Ock again for the 90th time?
Oh, at least, yeah. Well, you know, but Todd McFarlane managed to do that and make it look different.
Well, that's a stylistic thing, and Todd McFarlane's an entirely different animal. Todd McFarlane is he's far more than just a comic book artist. He's a marketing genius. Yep. And he's a very good storyteller, and his longevity with Spawn is clearly an indicator of that. He's just that good, you know, and God bless what he's done. I mean, he had foresight back then to do what a lot of people are just figuring out now. So you got to give that man as much credit as possible. And he's rich beyond the dreams of avarice himself.
I think artistically, you remember the Comics Journal, that old magazine? It was in there he was quoted of, you know, he considered himself more of a monster artist than a superhero artist. And I think looking at it through that lens, especially when you think of like the bad guys in Spawn, of like, oh, okay, I see what you mean. You know, that's where a lot of monster artists.
Funny thing is that when he first came out, and I had the books, I was buying the books. I was buying Incredible Hulk. I was buying Amazing Spider-Man. I wasn't crazy about him. I was like looking at all the faces he was drawing. Like, and I remember I was in college. It was 85. I said, these faces look like they're skin sacks filled with not quite mushed up enough mashed potatoes, because they were just these lumpy things. And he kept that up.
Yes, they were. Well, a lot of those guys, they I don't know if they were inked by themselves. You know, I mean, because Todd had his own style, but someone else is inking it, and it was like smoothed out, it was cleaned out. But when you clean something like Todd McFarlane's style out, it just doesn't look good anymore.
If memory
So
serves, he inked himself on the single word Spider-Man title, but it was someone
okay,
else on the Amazing Spider-Man, I believe.
yeah, that could be it. It's been a while. I mean, because I started working there right after all those guys left, and the worst part was when they decided to tell all the Marvel artists. Give me 1 sec. I'm hearing an echo. Do you guys hear an echo?
I hear it when you talk.
All right, give me a sec.
I don't hear it when I talk, and I don't hear it when anybody else talks. I'm going to keep
Can you hear
talking.
me now?
Go ahead, Rich. Talk and see if I hear you echo.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. All right. The worst part was when they asked the Marvel artists years after to draw like those guys from Image, and that was a crime. Oh my God! I was working at Marvel when I came across an issue, I think, of Alpha Flight. I'm not even too sure. And Herb Trimp was the penciler there.
That's what I was going to say. Fantastic Four.
They made him draw like Rob Liefeld, and I was just, I started crying. I mean, I was just like, good gravy. Are you serious?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was some weird stuff. Because
yeah, that was a weird period for Marvel.
Yeah, that was a strange ass period for Marvel, and it was just, yeah, and a lot of the people that were there, you know, that they were unusual. They were all a little bit like champions of like whatever little power that they thought they had, and they actually didn't, and it was just odd. It was just odd. I wasn't a fan of
anything. I'd give anything to go back to those days from what we've got now, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, kind of. Yeah, because what I don't like about today's Marvel and DC, I mean, just from what I've seen in the reactions of others, is that they keep rebooting the damn universes, and I'm like, what? What happened now? You know, I mean, did Spider-Man have another origin or something? I'm just like, what now?
Yeah,
you know,
I don't wish they've done with Marvel because
go over to the volume system every year. It's just another #1 series.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like this week alone. I saw a headline on it was comicbook.com, or it might have been CBR. It was one of those two, and it said, you know, Runaways 100th issue celebrates 100th issue, and I opened it up and it's like, Runaways number 36 will be the 100th issue of the book to carry that title. I'm like, but it's not Runaways 100. It's Runaways 36 volume whatever. You haven't been able to keep it running long enough to get to 100 issues. It keeps getting canceled.
Yeah, I remember when they did that with like Thor, but they canceled all. They counted when they got them to a milestone number. I forget what number it was, 700 or something like that, or 1,000 maybe. They counted all the other issues of Journey into Mystery that didn't even have Thor in it as part of that count.
Oh,
They did the same thing with Captain America on Tales of Suspense, Tales of Astonishing, forget which. You know, so sometimes they'll cheat on those numbers too.
Yeah. I believe they call that the legacy numbering, which is where it gets at the really high, as opposed to the this is Moon Knight Volume 6 because it got canceled 5 times before. You know.
Well,
After a while, you look at it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what happens is, you know, they want that the sales start to slump, so they want to get a bump. So okay, well, so they do a new #1, they get a bump up. Well, then sales start to slump again. They do another bump. Problem is, it goes down. It goes down more each time. I'm trying to get my hand in the picture where you can kind of see what I'm doing. It'll go up, then it'll go back down, and it keeps. It's a declining ladder. I mean, it keeps going down, 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 down. You know, they get with little bumps, but then ultimately they end up lower than what they were before. So they relaunch again, get another little bump, end up lower than what they were before. I mean, it's a self-deprecating cycle that's just taking them straight to the toilet.
Well, see, here's the thing I heard this week, Mike. You picked the wrong time to close your stores because comics are selling hotter than ever.
Oh, yeah.
The entire industry is doing great. Sales are
It actually
sales are
is
up.
doing great. Yeah, it really is doing great. It's back to $1 billion for sales per year, and that's rather encouraging. And what's great about it is that what's great about it, I'd like to think, is it's a lot more indies are coming up and a lot more. I mean,
I hope.
I hope so because I really do think independent comics are far better in a lot of ways than the Marvel and the DC regurgitated stuff. I mean, Michael, you were saying before about how they try and go for the bump, and it's a declining scale, and that you're absolutely correct because I mean it's just short-sightedness of trying to get that little bump in the sales, which is just a joke. And they think exactly, they think they're going to continuously buy the number ones as collector's items. And I'm like, well, if you buy the number ones and keep the comic alive for 120 issues, maybe, but not when you're doing it this way. And when I was working at when I was there, I mean, Marvel decided to try to inundate the market in order to wipe out DC Comics at that point. So they put out about 110 titles per month.
That's crazy.
For the time that I was there, and oh my God, that if anybody ever needed the art corrections department, it was then, because there was so much crap that was coming out of there, and I knew so many of the editors, and a lot of the editors there were hiring their friends, and their friends were real dog shit artists. They were terrible. I mean, really bad. And it's like it's almost like they were drawing it with crayon. And these were major quote unquote major publications, and it was just, God, it was just so bad. And like in January 1995, the entirety of the Marvel staff was invited to this swanky place where it's like we had an open shrimp bar. Open bar, we can eat all the food and drink all the booze that we wanted for a good few hours. And then one of the presidents of Marvel came downstairs, decided to give us like a big rah-rah speech about how amazing we're going to be. And then decided to say that we're going to take all the titles and condense them to about 50 or 55. And without anybody realizing what the hell was happening, I saw it immediately. And it was just, it's like, oh, holy crap. A couple of days later, we go back up there. They laid off everybody. It was a bloodletting. It was a slaughter. It was just nuts. I mean, there were people being fired and let go left and right. There was a couple of instances where a couple of the secretaries on the 11th floor got fired, and their angry husbands or boyfriends came in and beat the living crap out of the people who fired them. It was insane. Wow. Really, it was bad. And there was I forgot the name of her. I forgot who that girl was, but it's like this poor thing. She got fired, and she's all crying, and then all of a sudden her boyfriend comes up and he beats the crap out of one of the editors, I think. And I'm just like, Jesus fuck, what the hell?
It was funny. Last night I watched the Pope of Greenwich Village. I picture something like out of that movie happening there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was bad. Well, they deserved it because it's like they think that it's a very short-sighted way of thinking that if you go for the quick sales immediately, you think you're going to do something, because a lot of them were thinking, okay, these guys are going to get all these number ones and it's going to be awesome. But those books were so bad and so terrible. A lot of them were either returned or no one even bought them at all. And
we don't get returned. That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was also like the perfect. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You first, Mike.
In the UK, you're probably on a different system though with the weeklies.
Well, in the UK, he's all indie now, right?
Yeah. Well, England's always been all indie with the exception of 2000 AD and whatever else they have here. The like the Judge Dredd or the Tank Girl or the Captain Britain, or one of those things or something like that. Jesus Christ. So some of them are just like really, they're really out of this world. I'm like, wow, that's some really strange shit you guys got here in the UK. But
it's kind of a good example of why I don't trust anything Marvel or DC say. Here they were telling you guys, hey, everything's great, everything's good. The next thing you know, the bloodletting started. So when they say how the industry's doing great right now, Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I mean, every day I'm kind of glad I closed my stores because like they'll skip Avengers for 3 months, they'll skip Thor for 3 months. My customers are like, hey, what happened to my title? Well, they're just not making it. They've really cut back on the production at a time when the demand was there. I mean, this should have been just a monster record-setting year for all the comic book stores. People wanted something to read, but their response was, well, let's just cut back. And what was the result? All of a sudden, manga's outselling the superhero comics. It just and for them to claim that this is a better year when they're being outsold by manga, I think
Well, they're counting manga.
What's that?
They're counting manga in the
that's
numbers.
What I was about to say. They're probably including manga in their numbers, so they're distorted numbers. I mean, are they counting Scholastic too, which is always just sold mainstream bookstore?
They're counting Scholastic. They're counting the YA graphic novels. They're counting the manga. They're counting all the crowdfunding. So when you see crowdfunding do well, if you break it down and actually slice it out and just like so how did DC and Marvel do?
It's a disaster.
Not so good.
That's good. I also heard it was basically the merch, like the Funko Pops and the shirts and the trading cards, but those are
God help me. Those God help me. Those are like standard. Those are like standard like gifts and stuff like that on a lot of crowdfunding. I mean, Kickstarter has become.
No, I'm talking about like
whatever
the distributors are now. I was about to say Diamond, but whatever replaced them.
Lunar.
But if you order, 10 shirts, they count that as 10 units, and that's 10 comic books because the comic book was the origin of the IP for the shirt. It's a shell game. None of those numbers are real.
Worse.
I do have to tell you, I've seen a lot of Kickstarter campaigns. I think what it is that well, a lot of individuals are doing well for their property and for what they're putting out. That's what it is. And I think if we're going to count the sales like that, that's how we can say that like the indie market is thriving more because of the advent of the Kickstarting campaigns that people now have the ability or the chance to put out something really good that would otherwise be swept under the rug with all those with Marvel and DC inundating everything, and the shrinking down of what's going on with Marvel and DC is great for the indie books, and that's coming up. I mean, I was going to say a minute ago, Kickstarter has become the third largest comic book publisher on the planet as a result of just how many people just jump into it, and that's a good thing because the way that Marvel and DC have been homogenizing all their stuff, it's just the same old continuous rack of stories, and that there's nothing new about them. And if they are, they're only there if there's anything new about any of the characters that are there, it's only to serve an agenda more than it is to actually transform a character or to have that character evolve or to have that a different character entirely. I mean, before we would have like from Hal Jordan to Jon Stewart, that's fantastic. But now it's like you have to make sure that a lot of these characters are based on an agenda that's trying to be served, and that's the worst thing you can possibly do because agendas change from season to season.
Yeah,
I mean something like the New Warriors, quote unquote, that was the New Warriors that was created I can't even say their name because it's just the worst thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, it's like every single woke term you could have possibly thought was into that ridiculous
they had
idea.
Snowflake in safe space.
Safe space.
Yeah.
From the same company that put out, Thor and X-Men and Fantastic Four and the Avengers, and I'm like, this is the best you guys got now?
Yeah.
And really?
They had a girl with they basically had grown up Dora the Explorer because she had a backpack that everything was in it. She reached in it, she could pull the back thing out of her backpack, and a guy who could monitor social media.
Oh yeah. There was a guy who had internet gas. That's what it was.
He was exposed to internet gas.
This is a professional comic book writer who is like, the kid sniffed some internet gas and now he's Google essentially. Really, the writer of that, the writer, I won't even say his name because my eyes will melt because how much of a non-male he is. I'm just like, man, I can't even. I hate you so much, dude. I'm not even going to steal your milk money or your girl because you're just so pathetic. Honestly, I mean, this is what's out there now, and, and there's a certain short, fat, diminutive writer for a certain wall crawler who completely hates his fans, and it's just really I wonder who that could be. But I'm not a fan of his because it's like there's just so much bad now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just these writers don't know what the hell they're doing. I think in a way it's just because it's like maybe in their mind it's like, well, how else can I write this guy? What else can possibly we do to this person? And maybe they're right because at least with an independent book, you have an entirely new story. But there's also a thing on that side too, because some independent books are really just some of those independent books are just like affirmations of like teenage wet dreams or something like that.
Yeah. Self-affirmations and stuff like that, and inserts.
Yes, it's like the characters look exactly like the writer or the artist or something like that.
Oh,
but the character
you're talking about I Am Not Starfire.
Oh, I Am Not Starfire. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, not all of them are like that. There's plenty of really fantastic books out there. I mean, really, really good. I mean, far better than anything I can do.
Yeah, but it's the downside of the Indiegogo scene is there's no editor chain of command, so everyone's left to their own devices, and the quality varies wildly.
Yeah, I mean,
the quality of the story or the art
editor
varies wildly.
Both.
Yeah, you can hire an editor, but some of the editors have their own agendas themselves, and it's just
I mean,
because
some of it's real minor league stuff. They're not ready. This needs to go back in the oven for a while.
Oh well, a lot of them are the ones who tried to get into Marvel and DC and could not, and are now like, okay, well, we're going to publish our own thing, and we're going to be the next Stan Lee. And I'm like, well, there's your first mistake right there. You're not going to be the next Stan Lee because A, he's dead, and B, if you really if you really decided to go through all if you get rid of the fandom, he really wasn't that great of a writer, and he definitely wasn't the guy who put all of Marvel together. That was the King.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, that's
the King is the King is the reason why a lot of us are here, because we followed him and the way he friggin' told the story. Jack the King Kirby, he is the father or God of comic books, because he put all his characters to life. It was nice that Stan Lee quote unquote wrote them, but it's like it was the King who did all this. And then you had far superior writers coming in and other artists coming in and really fortifying on that. Like Chris Claremont with the X-Men. I that was one of my first books. How old was I? I was about 10 or something like that. Yeah, I went to a garage. I went to one of those flea markets, and this guy had comics in those long boxes. Yeah. And the first comic that I ever picked up was X-Men number 166. Double-sized. Paul Smith was the artist, and that's when I fell in love with comics. It's like the story was great. I was like, wow, these guys have claws coming out of their hands and they're cutting things. It's awesome. And they're shooting lasers out of their eyes. Oh, this is so cool. And it was like you had stuff like that, but now it's like it's not fun anymore, because
now they're having dinner.
Like,
they're having
it's not
dinner
fun anymore because
there's a lot of
that. It's like back then comic stories, you had the good and evil, and even if you had mixed heroes with mixed emotions or villains with mixed emotions, you could do that. But there's always a set goal. There's always a set goal that one person has and another person has. One is like the complete subservience of humanity. The other guy is like, no, that's not going to work. We're going to try and stop it. And you can have all that with all the complexities and all that. But the problem with that is that like, when you put it, again, it's like I said before, when you put agendas behind it, it ruins it.
Yeah. Now it's like everybody's a good person. They're operating for their own reasons. So all the villains can be redeemed, sort of, if you just stop to understand them, except for Donald Trump. He will always be the Red Skull.
But it's also the difference.
I'm going to tell you something. I lived in New York City for a long time. This guy, that Donald Trump is an entirely different animal. Trust me. But he is. But of what you were saying before, the humanizing of villains, it's evident in the Disney movies. The Cruella. Has anybody even heard of that stupid thing?
I've heard of it, not seen it.
All right, has anybody here seen 101 Dalmatians? You know, with Cruella
Yes.
Deville.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
a good one from the 40s.
They decided to humanize her and make her like a sympathetic character. And there were people my age or a little bit younger who were like, that movie is so amazing. I love what they did with Cruella. It was such an incredible character turn.
Does she
And it was
still
like,
kill
oh,
dogs for a coat?
yeah, I know. And it's like,
Then-
I'm like, guys, you do realize that you're watching a movie that's glorifying a woman who's going to grow up to kill puppies, right? You know, and it's like, and then they would actually get mad at me and say, excuse me, but this is like, everyone has a chance to redeem themselves. I'm like, get the frig out of here. She's like all of 20, and you give her about another 50 years of ripening, and she's gonna hate dogs. You know, like she's gonna want to kill all these dogs so she can be warm. You're idiots. What's wrong with you? It's like,
this is two different problems. You got the writers who are talking at people instead of to people, but then you also have these yo-yo customers, these consumers who feel that they're owed something or they're partners with the creator. It's like you just sit there and watch or read the thing when no one needs your notes.
Oh, well, Just Some Guy is a YouTuber that I listen to frequently. I really love his stuff. And he talked about this very same thing about people who have a headcanon that supersedes what the creator intended. And he brought up these examples of people, you know, saying, oh, this is really what these characters are like. And the creator saying, no, they're not. And I'm the guy who created them. And they're like, well, yes, they are. Just because you wrote them doesn't mean we can't have our own interpretation of how these characters are. Like,
you can be wrong all you want, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Back to School, where he was assigned to write a report on Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes.
So
he
hires Kurt Vonnegut. He was like, I don't know who you got to write that for you, but he knows nothing about Kurt Vonnegut.
It's Kurt Vonnegut who's telling him everything about, you know, it's Kurt. He's actually interviewing Kurt freaking Vonnegut, and it's just like,
Kurt wrote it himself.
Yeah, he wrote it.
I remember that. It was hilarious.
That was great. So,
yes.
You're in the unenviable position now where, you know, you're doing independent stuff. So you're like, you know, don't give a, you know what, about the past at Marvel and DC. So coming out of the art corrections area, I want to ask, who is it that people think is an art god who wouldn't be nothing if it wasn't for his art being corrected all the time?
Oh, Jesus. Well, that's a tough question to ask, because the only standout artists that they had when I was there was the Kuberts.
Oh, yeah.
Adam and Andy. You know, well, one was on X-Men, the other one was on Wolverine. And they were, as far as I was concerned, as far as everybody was concerned, they were like the golden boys, and rightly so. They're both fantastic illustrators. And I think there was probably maybe one or two more. Joe Madureira was there, but that was when he was infusing the manga style into American style comics. And he was all of like 1920 when he started, but he was always
question about that
late.
Too.
Yes, please, but I'll try and answer it. Hopefully I can.
I was a big fan of him. At that post-Image Marvel era where you worked, he was my favorite. And all through basic, in my first year in the Army, you know, the X-Men were at the PX at the Army bases, and I kept following along. Right. And so here's the question. He stayed on that monthly Marvel schedule for 3 years, but then goes to Image and does like one issue a year. Either he had a lot of help or what happened there?
I think when you're that young, I can only assume that if he was doing it at Marvel like that, because he had a lot of issues with running stuff late, and that just permeated into his further career outside of Marvel when he started doing his own stuff. As far as I could tell, I mean, he did Battle Chasers for an issue or two, I think, but his art was so exotic. I believe he went into game design, like game concept art, where it's a lot more lucrative than working as a comic book penciler. Truth to power. I've known people in the gaming industry. If you actually get in there as a concept artist, you make bank. But it's a very segmented thing, and he got in just when it was really, that's when they had like PlayStation 1, like in the mid 90s. So it's like he got in there and he probably stayed there. I mean, I didn't follow Joe Madureira's career that much, but I do know that he was one of the X-Men artists there. He wasn't there for that. I didn't know he was there for 3 years.
It may have been
I
a
didn't think
little
he
less,
lasted
but
that
it
long.
was like
That's
a 30
okay.
issue, something like that.
It could be. I mean, I'm honestly not too sure. I do know that he was there for a bit, but his lateness and everything was the reason why he got out of there. And there was a lot of issue with lateness over at Marvel. I could tell you that for nothing. I mean, as an inker, I don't remember. It was like salad days for me because there were so many pencilers who were so late with their stuff and so many inkers who were late with their stuff. I just gobbled all that work up and I just did it. And I'm like, all right, yeah, sure. I'll get a new car like this, which I actually didn't. But still, it's like, the consistency of how regular the work was coming out was always like a dog's hair away of being late. And a lot of times it was. And and to this day, it doesn't seem like they've still have that problem where it's like there's maybe 3 or 4 inkers on a book because it's like, the penciler just doesn't want to hand anything in. And it's like, how do you not solve this issue after a while? It's really the same old stuff, whatever it might be. And I got jaded with working for either of them because it's the same stuff over and over again. It's the same useless politics.
Yeah.
So
does it feel like the same environment both places?
Well, yeah, it does. And it's the same thing because you see, Marvel and DC were very incestuous, really. Like a lot of editors would go from Marvel to DC to Marvel to DC to Marvel to DC, and then, that's it. I mean, there would be one time, like I would work with a couple of editors over at Marvel, and then I would have the gigs at DC, and those same editors were over at DC Comics, and I'm like, holy crap! And it's like it's not the first time they were working there, and I'm just like, wow, I mean, it's like give some other people a chance to do something a little bit better because some of those editors weren't all that good, and there was one editor who's gonna remain nameless, who, sexually assaulted a couple of women at a certain and that guy's he's a real son of a bitch for doing that. He's a real pig
so long for
a real pig for doing something like that to women like that. That disgusts me, and that went unreported for a while. You know what I mean? That wasn't talked about for a great length of time, and that made me sick because that's
what was bad about when the women
that to me is a good old boys protecting thing. I'm sorry.
And when the women complained, they lost their jobs.
Yeah, that's horrible. Having to live with that, having to live with that. I mean, obviously, none of us can even infinitesimally understand that, but having to see that on the outside and look at that. And see these women who are just as brilliant, as creative, or probably more so than most of us here, have to deal with that, and then have to deal with that by that slimy piece of crap. And anybody else who thought of that and didn't say anything. I don't care if I get in trouble for this. They're complicit. If they didn't say anything, they're effing complicit.
Oh, yeah. How many times have we heard this happen now where, somebody in the comics industry is like, oh, they're out the door because they did this horrible thing. And it's like within 24 hours, it's like, Heidi McDonald's like, well, yeah, we all knew he was doing this, but, it was an open secret.
It happened at Marvel, too. It like one of the, like a very tiny individual. Now, I know what his name is. I'll tell you later. RJ. But this very small little meaningless individual somehow slithered his way into like being like the the go-to coffee bitch boy to Joe Quesada when Joe Quesada was there, and it was just, it's like he used his, from what I told from a rather reliable source, that this person used his leverage to get women to sleep with him in order to get writing gigs. And it's just, I'm like, how do you live with yourself, man? How do you live with yourself as a male, as a man, to do that? And you know, these fake bursts of power, it just really pisses me off, because it doesn't require any discipline to get to that point. It doesn't require endless hours of being an artist or having to suffer through deadlines and everything. I mean, you're right place, right time, and you're a conniver. And a lot of people like that got into the upper echelons of both Marvel and DC, and it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I mean, I don't really trust a lot of people that I work with, I don't really trust a lot of outside artists to begin with, because I've seen how people flake. And that's the reason why with the book that I have, and no, it's not me promoting myself, it's the reason why I do most of, if not everything on my book, because then I know who's responsible for any F-ups, and that would be me. You know, there's a lot of people who have an agenda instead of like wanting to put out good quality work. I mean, there's plenty of people who do put out good quality work, and I said before, better than me, much far better than me, but there's too many that are there, in my opinion, that have their own damn agenda. And
what do you think of this? Because I've seen this in my own life, and I'm wearing the right shirt for it. It's Sam Houston State University when I was in journalism school there.
Yes, sir.
The whole publishing lifestyle in New York is like a big end game win condition for people. If I get to New York, it's the guys want to like work for Sports Center, you know. The girls want to live like Sex in the City, where I write for Vogue or the New Yorker and go to brunch 5 times a day. But I think a lot of that bad behavior stems from people that the court takes a back seat to being in publishing in New York and living that lifestyle. And how much do I want to rock the boat to keep all my goodies, you know?
Well, the way that I see it, you know, it's like, there's a lot of people, there's people that I would have considered working with who only get into that specific industry for the popularity of it, or the perceived popularity, or the perceived riches that you'll see on TV. I had a friend of mine who's no longer my friend, who wanted to get into comics, and he wanted to do all this stuff and create all this stuff, and he was so positive and so, you know, this, that, and the other. And I kind of took him under my wing, and I told him, okay, this is how you have to do it. Trust me, this is how you build. And it's a slow build. I mean, something like trying to do what you do out of nowhere, that will take a couple of years at least, if you're doing it the right way. You know, and this person didn't want to hear it, and neither did his girlfriend, you know, and quite frankly, his girlfriend was too busy watching episodes of Billionaire or Power or Empire or whatever the hell it is, and they think that that type of attitude will get you somewhere, and it does not. And there's a lot of people around that generation who think that. And who also think that if they do something, or if they're confrontational, or if they do something that's a certain way, that will not work, because eventually you would turn everybody off. But what gets me the most, and I'm at an age where I'm like right in the middle of generations. I mean, because when I was a small child in Brooklyn, I remember watching You Bet Your Life, as well as the Johnny Carson show back then, as well as like some of the new television stuff that was coming out. I'm like right in the middle of that. And it's like, that's a benefit for me, because I got to see both sides of whatever it's going to be. And I see a lot of people under the age of like 30 who are just, who've adopted this attitude where it's just like, this is coming to me and I'm going to get it one way or the other, regardless of whether I have any type of talent or ability or not. And
it's participation trophy generation.
I can't stand that.
Hey,
If I lost, I lost. I'm just, that's the reason why you have first, second, and third, and then there's everybody else, because it's like, if you get to third place, all right, I need to get to second place if I feel like doing this. That's how you inspire people
reward
to
for
leave.
trying harder. Yeah.
Yes, it's like it's a reward for trying harder, and that's really that's been a merit system type thing for thousands of years. And all of a sudden, to make sure that a few people don't feel bad about themselves, I'm like, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know a lot of my friends are probably. I don't think a lot of my friends are going to be upset about it. They think the same way I do, but at the same time, it's just that it's like. I mean, what I'm saying with you gentlemen here, I don't really care if I get some people upset with me because of that, because everything that I'm saying is kind of true. I mean, if I failed at something, I busted my ass to make sure that I would get it. I mean, when I was an intern for Marvel before I got hired, I failed 3 times to get a job there. I wanted to get a job there, and I was told, you have to do this in order to do this. And I did, but then he said, okay, we'll do this now. I had to kill myself in order to get to where the hell I was.
Yeah.
And it was worth it. It's absolutely worth it. You struggle for a little bit. Uh-oh. Oh, no. What's going to happen? Are your feelings hurt now? No. Good. Then keep freaking working at it until you get to that point. And I did. I did. And I didn't go to art school or any of that stuff. Not because I thought I was so damn talented, but because I busted my ass. And I did what was told. I didn't have any attitude. I didn't have an agenda. I don't have an agenda now with the stuff that I put together. That's the one thing that a lot of people do.
The agenda is to make money for yourself doing what you love.
That's one of the things that I want to do with the stuff that I do that I love, but I do it because I love it. I do it because it sounds corny, but it's in here.
Yeah.
And it's in here. That's the drive. That's the thing, and when I meet other people who are like that, that's a thrill, because it's like you love it for what it is. You don't love it for the.
You're doing it because you have to.
Exactly, and when if rewards will come later, you have to do it because you love it. If you do it just for like a quick buck or for anything along those lines, then you really aren't really doing it, period. And it's like I've seen a couple of Kickstarters where it's the funniest thing, where it's like the person will talk about their story for like all of 2 sentences and then go into this big spiel about how many stretch goals and how many rewards and how many variant covers they're going to have with their issue. And I'm just like, yeah, what's the story about?
Yeah.
Oh, it has warriors and guys with big guns and titties. And I'm like, all right, what's the story about? And I'm trying to be kind, and I'm trying to use like words with the least amount of syllables. And
have you ever heard
go ahead, please.
Have you ever heard of a publishing company called Disgruntled Fanboys? There's a reason.
I haven't.
Yeah,
I think so. I think some of them really are. I think it's because it's like they can't get into Marvel and DC.
Well, that was actually the name of the company. And I was at Orlando Comic Con one year with my latest release of my Wall Stars comics, and I had a booth and this and that. Well, these guys had bought a double end cap, had electricity run so they could have monitors going, electricity going. I mean, they were it had like 5 people flew down there to promote this thing, and all they had was 1 issue of a comic, and it was that was when 30 Days a Night had just come out, and so this was a guy who, and it's beautifully produced, expensive paper, high quality printing, painted artwork throughout, but it was all like splash pages, and basically the whole story was an old man goes to bed in his 4-poster bed, wakes up in the middle of the night, and there's a vampire standing at the end. That's the whole story. And so they were there like, yeah. Well, meanwhile, I had just completed my Volume 3 Wild Stars run. I was selling a complete story, 7 issues. Yeah. And I was moving set after set after set. And in the whole weekend, I watched them sell 1 comic. I felt so sorry for them. And they were getting angry at me because I sold everything I took with me. But sometimes these people, they just have the wrong expectations. They made 1 comic, it looked good, but there just wasn't anything there. And they blew all this money, really went all out to promote it, and didn't get the reaction they thought they would. I mean, you got to have something there. You can't just have an idea, just do a germ of an idea, and expect to hit a home run with it. And that's what they went down there thinking.
What happens with that? What happens with that is that it's like people get stars in their eyes, and I think a lot of it now is the advent of social media because the insta fame. I mean, it's like it started with that stupid reality TV crapola where you can act like a complete and total deviant and get endorsement deals of a few $1,000,000. I mean, the worst cases were those Jersey Shore idiots. And I hate to say that I used to live in Staten Island, New York, and some of these troglodytes were like neighbors of mine, and it's like these people were really the lowest common denominator, but they're meant to be emulated. And when you get that type of culture and you get people who want to be that way, they know they're never going to be quote unquote stars or actors or anything, but they could be reality show idiots,
celebrities. Yeah,
it's a celebrity. And now it's like TikTok famous or Instagram famous, and it's like you're really not garnering anything. Even if you think you're getting money out of social media, you're still useless.
Yeah, it's still disposable. That's
Yeah,
one of my big
disposable
criticisms of Gary Vee, which I've made on previous episodes of this show, is he gives that rah-rah speech, and we got to hustle, we got to grind, we got to focus 24/7. And the theory is like what the comic book example Michael said, that if we have the magic marketing plan and if we post our links 18 times a day on Twitter, that'll cover up for the no story, no art, no substance. It's really people who should not be doing it. And I hate to say that, but you got to be realistic. You can't sing like Whitney Houston. You're not going to be in the NBA. What can you actually do as opposed to this pipe dream stuff?
That's what clogs the market. That's what clogs the market. When I was working at Marvel or DC, and I was jockeying for a gig or anything like that, before all of this stuff that was going on insane with all this social media crap, I would have to compete with maybe about 20 other guys whose portfolios were pretty damn good. And a bunch of times I got the gig over these guys, but you have that. And that's one thing. But then you have every single idiot on the planet thinking that they can do something like this. And they're the ones trying to get that job too, especially if they go to conventions and try and inundate everybody with that. It's like, try being an editor there who has to look at every single one of these crappy portfolios. And then by the end of the day, when he's tired or she's tired, and it's like she's heard enough of these idiots running around all over the place, and then you come by with a stellar piece of art, and they're like, okay, great, leave your damn card, whatever. You have to leap over those idiots too. It's like you have what it used to be like 20 people jockeying for a job. Now you have 1,000 of them, and 995 of them really suck. 3 of them are halfway decent, and the other 2 are the ones that are stepping in front of you or in the way.
And they don't even go to the conventions to do it anymore.
You have to jump over the first. I'm sorry?
They don't even go to the conventions to do it anymore because they just post their work on Tumblr or DeviantArt, and an editor of a book has said, told, go find me an artist for this. They're like, well, tick 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 tick, superhero art, and they just say, I like this guy's stuff. Send him a DM and see if he's available for hire.
That's the worst way to do it, in my opinion. I mean, you don't have any, because the majority of people that you hire, like off the internet or something, that you don't know if they're proven or not. You don't. You don't know if they have any type of proven track record. You
don't know if they can turn it in on time. You don't know how their credentials are.
If I ever did anything like that, if I ever decided to start any type of publishing company, and anybody sent me in a portfolio, and I'm like, well, I need a resume of some sort, and I need some sort of proof of publication that's more consistent than once every 5 months, because I wouldn't allow that. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna. It's not gonna take 5 months. You're not friggin'. You're not the most elite penciler on the planet that you think I'm gonna wait for 5 months for you to finish a friggin' page. You're out of your mind.
I really think and suspect that the publishers who hire people that way, they're trying to lowball these guys. They're going in there, who will work for $5 a page or as low as we can possibly get.
That's outside the United States. That's what it is.
Yeah, almost always.
Yeah.
That's outside of the United States.
That kind of ties into what we're talking about here. I had dinner with him on the Comic Book League of Defense Fund cruise back about 2000, and he was telling me that the secret to breaking into the comic book industry as an artist, he said, it's like trying to break into an armed camp. He said it's actually easier to break out of an armed camp than just trying to break into one, and because there's all these barriers in your way. But then he was also telling me the story about how he used to teach art school, and he had this one student who was so enthusiastic. Every time he would give an assignment, this guy would turn in like 5 of them. Problem was his work was awful, but he was enthusiastic. And so at the end of the semester, he was getting ready for the summer break, and the guy goes up to Mr. Eisner and goes, do you think I've got a chance to make a career? And Will was a nice guy. He didn't want to break this kid's dreams, but he said, well, wait a minute. If I send him to a publishing, like a newspaper editor, those guys are pretty blunt. They'll tell you what it is. So he said, well, why don't you try to get a job at the local newspaper? The kid's like, okay, yeah, sure. Summer goes by. Next semester comes around. This kid shows up in his first class, and he's wearing a suit and tie. And Will's thinking, yeah, he found out that he doesn't have it as an artist. And he's probably working for his dad's company now. And the guy goes, Mr. Eisner, can I talk to your class, for a second and say something to him? He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So the guy gets up in front of the class, points at Will Eisner, and goes, that man made my career as a comic book illustrator, or as an illustrator. And Will's like, what? You got work? But then he realized, like, one of the most important things to a newspaper, people who meet deadlines. Didn't matter how good he was. This kid was reliable as could be. He would always get his work turned in on time. He got work, and he went on to a long career. And, so it's not necessarily even how good you are. It's how determined you are and how much you're willing to put in the work.
And how much you want to improve as you go along.
Oh yeah, there's got to be
that's
that too.
one thing. If you want to improve as you go along, that's a good thing. That is me. I mean, that is me. Every single page that I draw, I make sure that I'm doing at least a little tiny bit better. You always have to. You can't. And that's another thing that I don't like, is that there are some people who are content with whatever the hell they're doing. Yes, that's my book, INCANTESI. Yes, I love that book.
It's some of the stuff you're drawing, man.
Hey, July 22nd. That's next week.
No, well, it's actually the 25th. I can't tell time these days. I suck at it. That's my art. That's my art. And those are my books. That was from the first issue. This is art from the second issue. That's all me. Pencils, inks, and colors.
And by the way, anybody watching this, I did add Rich's link to the description below, along with the links to all of you guys' stuff. So, there should be a link to everybody who's on here. So Brian, there's a link to your eBay store. Michael, there's a link to Wild Stars. We link everybody who's involved.
Yeah, and
this is going to go with Indiegogo.
Yes, I'm going to have an Indiegogo campaign as soon as this one ends as well. I succeeded in this campaign, thank God. But I'm also going to have an Indiegogo campaign, because it turns out that there are some people who are willing to back the book, just not through Kickstarter, which is okay. I'm like, all right, I'll just put out this over here. And I even made an alternate cover for it. I'm not one for gimmicks, but I decided to differentiate for another crowdfunder, just to make it like a little more special or whatnot, whatever.
It's how complicated this makes it. Yeah, it is.
But you took the words out of my mouth. It's special for the customer. I got this at this site. I got this one at this site. People care about that stuff.
They do.
Yeah, and it was suggested by a couple of people who back the Indiegogo campaigns exclusively. It's like, if you do this will work for you. And I'm like, okay, and it's like, that's another thing too. As an artist, you can never be above taking advice from someone other than yourself.
Yeah,
that's another thing. And here's another experience. That same person I was talking about, who believed like Empire and Power or whatever those shows were the way to do things. I actually got this person a gig with an indie company, and they were going to pay him. And this person was supposed to report to me because I was his art director, and he was supposed to show me thumbnails of pages before he would go to finish them. And I'm like, okay. He would show them to me, and I go to him, look, we're friends, but when it comes to the art, I'm going to tell you what you need to do, and I expect you to follow it through. And he was really gung-ho about it, but then after I told him a couple of times that it's like his first page wasn't all that great, he decided to go to the person above me, which was also my yeah. You can't do that, and he did that twice. And my friend who was my friend who owned the company, he looked at him and he goes, "Did you show this to Rich yet?" And he goes, "Well, no." And he goes, "Why not?" "Well, I figured you'd see it first." And he goes, "You need to show this to him first all the time, because if you don't, I'm not approving a damn thing that you're doing." And he understands, just like I understand, there's a chain of command when it comes to putting together a comic. Just because you have some sort of attitude or you think that you're owed something doesn't mean that you can jump over someone who knows maybe 100 times more than that person will ever know. And I'm not even saying that I know the most, but I definitely do know more than him. And Pops, I am awake.
When somebody does something like that, they're not defending their constitutional rights. They're trying to get their way. It's a little childish, you know?
Yeah.
Well, it is childish in a way that it's like throwing it. Look, throwing a tantrum isn't. Whoop, sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. I'm holding this with my hand.
Throwing a tantrum.
No, throwing temper tantrums and complaining to others in like chat forums, or talking with a bunch of your friends over and over again about how miserable they are, and staying in a circle of constant misery that perpetuates itself. That's not the way to do things. You need to look inside of yourself and wonder, why is this happening to me? But not like, oh my God, woe is me. Just like, what do I need to fix? Because I'll tell you 1,000 times, I did the same thing when I first started at Marvel. And that's why I got to where I got to, because I didn't think that I was the best artist in the world. I always wanted to improve. And most people don't want to do that now. They just want to put anything out and they think that they're great, and they're not. And that's what's missing with the quality of work these days. You know, no one's humble. Very few people are humble about this now. Very few people. And it's heartbreaking. It is, because I mean, thankfully, I'm part of that older generation as well as this newer generation, because I understand it. But you know, I'm as liberal and progressive as any liberal or progressive is. I mean, all the stuff that they're thinking of with whatever agendas they have, I think that a lot of it is correct. But at the same time, it's like not to a point where it's like everything should be handed to you. Nothing should be handed to you. You're owed nothing in this world. Nothing.
Right.
Ever in this world. You have to take responsibility for your actions. And I've screwed up a couple of times too. And you learn from these things and you bust your butt in order to get to where you want to go. And if you can't do it, then either tuck your tail and leave, or sit back and fortify yourself. And that's the sad state of everything today, because no one wants to do that. It's too tough. Come on.
It's work. It's you're supposed to be able to turn in a comic and become an image artist of the 90s overnight, because that's what it looked like in the 90s. In the 90s, it looked like if you could draw a pose, and then you could put out a 22-page or an 18-page book with some ads, and you'd make $1 million. That was the appearance to the readers, because these guys just kind of jumped out of nowhere.
That's right, it was, and that ruined a lot of things too, because if anybody can even remotely draw like that, they think that I had a shot, and it's like, no, you don't have a shot. But 20 years later, those kids who wanted to draw like that are not drawing like that now because of Kickstarter, and it allows the funding for it. Yeah, and it just perpetuates it. And to me, it just waters down a market that really needs to continuously stay afloat with the quality that it has the capability of giving. Because if it doesn't, it just may very well sink and go beneath manga or anime or whatever the hell it's going to be. Because we all have to stop having our own agendas and think collectively.
I think the best thing is people to vote with their money. I know one thing. I think it was Batman. It was definitely a DC title where they're drawing somebody talking on the phone. No one ever needs to see that ever for any reason. That's the worst visual. You know, there's too many bad ideas making it onto the page.
Yeah, it's like no, I don't know.
That was
sometimes it hurts. I'll be honest with you.
I don't know who was
Sometimes
writing it, but it was Batman on the phone, and I remember it was the detective who would later become the Spectre, Crispin something or other.
When they did the thing of it was the same panel 9 times, and they're just changing the dialogue of like,
Oh,
we don't
God, I
need
hate
this
that.
page at all.
Yes, the talking head thing.
God, my friend, I've seen a page where it's just one panel of the person just standing there with a stoic face. There was one. Holy crap! I don't know who wrote this, but there was one page of Spider-Man where there's Peter Parker, Aunt May. No, it's Peter Parker, Mary Jane, standing above where Aunt May is in the hospital, and it's the same panel over and over and over and over and over 9 times, and it's like Peter says May in the first panel, and then he goes 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then the 9th he goes, "Don't die." And I've seen this piece of artwork. It's just Spider-Man. It's just that one small panel up top, and then it's copied and pasted manually into each one of those areas, and then they just letter that area, and that is the most laziest stuff. Oh my God, Bart.
There's a time and a place for that kind of a thing, and
no, there ain't.
You don't
No,
think so? Because I see that as a way of drawing out the moment.
Maybe, but not as. I mean, there has to be a little bit of inanimate movement with it. You know, it's like maybe like
a clock ticking in the background is, if the clock changed times in the background, that would be, something.
Well, you want to know would be a perfect analogy to that. When right after Sonny got shot and killed in The Godfather.
Yeah.
Where the Godfather goes to the little Undertaker guy, and he goes, "I want you to use all your powers to fix up my son. I don't want his mother to look at him like this." And he pulls back, the cover, and of course, I mean, you don't really see it, but it's implied that you see Sonny Corleone's bullet-ridden body. It's grotesque, and even the Undertaker is like, "Oh my God, this is horrifying." And then you see a moment where you see Don Corleone looking at his son. We don't see his son, but he's looking at his son. And this is the mastery of Marlon Brando's acting too. It's like the subtle changes in his face where he's looking and then he raises his eyebrows like he's about to cry. And it's about a good 3-4 seconds until he looks around and goes, "Look how they massacred my boy."
Yeah.
That is something that is something that can be done in 4 panels that are quick. It's like he's looking like it's like for the first time he's really taking a look at what happened to his son. It's like he's looking, keeping that stoic look, and then it's breaking a little bit, and then it's on the verge of tears where he's saying, "Look how they massacred my boy." That is where the impact would be, not if you just stab the goddamn thing. Yeah, there's a huge difference. If there's a subtle change in the panel, in the expression of the person that has that thing that's happening to them, that's what makes a repeating panel work. That it's not an exact photocopy of the damn image. It's the subtle changes. You see,
when it's a moment that advances the story, because the one me and RJ are talking about, we saw the same one. This is any phone call that could be made anytime, anywhere. That it's not related to the story at all.
Oh, and it was horrible because not only was it a phone call, but it's like Batman saying, "I'm grilling," and it's Bruce Wayne grilling. He's not Batman, but Bruce Wayne on the phone with Batman, and he's like, "Oh, you've got a suspect." He's like, "No, I'm grilling a steak," and for the rest of the page, it's Crispin telling Batman, "Are you nuts? Do you know how hard that is?" He's giving cooking advice to Batman.
It's the exact opposite of what Rich just described. I mean, it's just disposable to get.
Yeah, that didn't work.
Oh God, who's the writer? Tom King? Oh God.
Yeah, I believe so. Don't double check that, but I believe so.
He revels in. It almost sounds like he pleasures himself whenever he thinks his dialogue is clever. It's not. Sorry,
No.
it's not.
He ain't no Tarantino.
It's not.
You
That
know?
was the same issue.
Yeah,
Where,
it's not. You're not Tarantino. You're none of that stuff. You're a
Mhm.
guy who just like thinks that you're Tarantino and you're not. No.
Yeah.
same issue of Batman. It also had a rapist, and they had a close-up picture of him unzipping his pants. So yeah, they got a lot of flack on.
Yeah, I give up. I give up. It's that's another thing too. Too many people being too clever for their own good.
Oh yeah.
How clever themselves. It's like I mean, how's it working out for you being clever? It isn't.
They should try to master that concept of beginning, middle, and end. Why don't we do that before we get clever?
Oh, there's no such thing. They want to go to the end before they hit the beginning. It's just the funniest thing in the world. The art of communication has been lost in a lot of ways, and it minimizes and dehumanizes conversation, and it takes away the nuances that people need to pick up on. Instead of like actually speaking to a human being and listening, most people are just waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah, and they're writing towards the trade now too. They're not writing, hey, I'm going to tell a 22-page story of Superman's flying out and Terra Man attacks, and he's got to overcome whatever the obstacle is. It's a surprise, but he beats him in the end, and he goes back to work. And the next issue is going to be a totally different villain. Has absolutely no bearing on the first issue. Won't have any bearing on the second issue. It's just the next chapter of Superman. I miss those comics.
I do too, and it's like there's reasons that you have stuff like that, because you're trying to establish continuity of the character, and it's like I see too many. I've seen a bunch of these comics also. You see, I've seen a lot of this crap. It's like they jump right into what the character's supposed to be, and then they do something that's shocking.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like there's this one comic that I read that I backed, which I wish I didn't back because it was absolute dreck. It's like this character is like you see like the first 2 pages where it's like the character's like a little girl or something, and she's like, "Daddy, can I be the best at what I'm doing too?" And he goes, "Of course, honey, you could be the best at what you're doing too." Kind of like a 6th grader wrote the damn thing, because that's not how human conversations happen. And then all of a sudden, you fast forward about 20 years later, she's a complete and absolute lesbian, and they're both like jumping on each other's titties, and it's like, hey, shock value. She's a lesbian. Yeah, it's like shock value. Look at this. This is what it is. And
the diluted irony is I will bet you $1,000 whoever that creator is, ironically, does not know who Roger Corman is and is behaving exactly like him.
Oh, whatever he's trying to do. I know who this person is, and whatever he's trying to do, he uses his 2-year-old son as a prop, saying, "Look how great of a daddy I am. I'm doing this for my son." And I'm like, "You're not doing this for your son. You're not doing this for anybody. You're doing this for yourself because you suck."
If you were doing it for your son, it would be a book your son could read.
Yeah, it would be a book your son could read, exactly. And it's not even so much. It's definitely not the lesbianism that shocks me. That doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care what gender preference or what gender choice you are. It's the human being inside of you that makes me like you or dislike you. It's the fact that it's just like used just as a prop.
Yeah.
And that there's no backstory behind it. There's no establishing anything. It's like they don't want to tell a story. They don't want to deliver this. I'm going to use the first chapter of my book as an example, and RJ read it. It's like you get to know who the character is, the main character is, within the span of about maybe 8 or 9 pages, but their story doesn't come complete until their complete origin doesn't finish until like the end of the book, or at least until the next chapter, which is what we have right now for the Kickstarter here.
The end of chapter 2 is when she does full reveal.
Well, she reveals the uniform that she's going to wear, but there's parts in the script that she's decided she's going to take a decidedly dark turn, or it's the beginning of it. And the main character is going to grow and evolve or devolve depending on how the story is going to unfold. And things about this whole story are revealed slowly and, in the real course of time, not like in the span of 2 pages.
Yeah. It's
and that's lost. A lot of that stuff is lost. And
there's a
I'm
fine line
with you
of
guys
doing
with
the
a lot of the
timing.
frustrated. I'm with a lot of you. I'm with all of you guys when it comes to the frustration on how things have become.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm with you with the
I proceed to
agendas.
not
I'm
like
tired
it.
of it. There's a lack of fundamentals of just basic stuff.
There's no fundamentals, my friend. There are no fundamentals. And it's like, I mean, there's pages that have all the flash of like whatever early 90s image art that they might have, but the way the panels are constructed, you can't tell where the story is going. I've seen panels like that, and there are people who are like, oh, this is the greatest panel I've ever seen. And I'm like, no, it's not, because you don't know where the hell the story is. And just a couple of days ago, oh my God, and I don't care who hears this, there was someone who drew an action scene where it's just like this, about maybe 30 or 40 heroes fighting this one really large monster. And the moment that I saw it, I was like, someone just blatantly ripped off the cover for Crisis of Infinite Earths number 12. And it was like pose for pose, like hero for hero, reaction for reaction, right down to the minutia of
That's a
detail.
tracing.
Oh yeah, and then were people who were in their that had to be in their like late 20s, early 30s, who were like, "This is one of the best comic panels I've ever seen. How long did it take you to do this?" Oh, as long as it took me to lightbox the damn thing, you know.
That's
exactly.
Perez, how long it took him to do it.
Someone got upset with me because I was like, "Wow, nice way to swipe the Crisis of Infinite Earths number 12," and someone is like, "You know what? It doesn't matter because he's using it in the heart of it." And the cover design and the cover of it captures the soul of its essence. And I'm like, as soon as you start masturbating all over your face, just let me know when you're done, so I can tell you off and tell you what it's really like. And it's like, enough. I'm
gonna have to
God.
look for that one because
don't
the
whatever
one
you do.
The one I always see all the time is the crowd. You remember the death of Supergirl? I mean, that thing's been done to death now.
Yeah.
But I see that crowd scene a lot. Sometimes minus the foreground figure, but just the whole pantheon arrangement. Like, yep,
that was one of the only times that particular issue was one of the only times I ever actually got upset for a comic character. The other time that I don't laugh when I say this. The only time that I ever actually cried when a character died was X-Men 137 when Jean Grey died, which of course was negated, bastards.
Of course,
but it's like that was so powerful and had so much meaning, and that story was built from like X-Men 101 all the way to this. It took 3 years to tell that story, and it's so powerful and it has such resonance, and it's like that's what drew you into comics, because you could empathize with these characters. That was great about Marvel comics, that you could empathize with these characters. Like, they were powerful, but they were still human. And now it's like, hey, we're going to do 2 pages.
With these people were real.
Pages of this, and this character is going to be the most powerful thing that ever walked the face of the earth. And I'm just like, wow, you guys really suck.
Yeah,
really. It's like I've had it. It's why I don't really read a lot of comics these days, because there's a few that I do read that I back from my colleagues who do the same thing that I do, and I like their. Yeah, exactly. I like their stories, because they know what the hell they're doing. My friend Mike DeBruin, I love him. He's awesome. He has this whole fantasy world thing, and it's really good. He has a new story every issue, and it's fantastic. And it doesn't, like I said, it just like, it doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't have like any type of political correctness or something that it was like this. I was so upset when Doug Ramsey died. Yes, I remember that too. when Doug Ramsey was shot and killed in front of the rest of the New Mutants, and Magneto, of all people, had to be the one to tell his parents. Magneto.
Yeah.
It's like that. But it got to the point where it's like where Magneto evolved and changed. And one of the changes that Magneto had was in X-Men 150 when he almost killed Kitty Pryde. He was like, "What the hell am I doing?" And that was his slow change and evolution into
It was
joining
a slow
the
one,
X-Men.
though.
Yes, but still, he still did.
Yeah.
That's what's great about a lot of these characters, that they grow and evolve over time. You can't have something that you just start off with because you feel like lashing out at something. That's what's lost. The art of the storytelling is lost.
Magneto
It
evolved,
is.
and the rest of the X-Men became villains.
Yeah.
A
lot of them did become villains. I mean, a lot of them had that type of agenda thing. I mean, I can understand how Scott Summers would all of a sudden become a dick, because it's like he's always followed everything that Charles Xavier did, but then all of a sudden, what a lot of stuff that Charles Xavier did was a lie. And you can see that that's possible too, because this is a man who is able to enter the minds of anybody on the planet and can do whatever the hell he wants. Now, how benevolent can you possibly be after a while? You're going to wonder if that girl likes you. You're going to see if there's something that you can say. I mean, it's human nature. And that's what's beautiful about, again, that's what it is. It's a development of a character, whether it's good or bad. And a lot of that is lost because the majority of people who want to do these types of comics, who wanted to in the 90s, who didn't get to, but now can do it right now in the 2020s, that's the frustration that they have that's being let out on these pages. It's like, well, I'm going to do it my way. And it's like, all right, go ahead, but it still sucks. No matter what.
Michael, you'd mentioned before the show you had some questions about UK comics since Rich has relocated to the UK.
My question may be a little bit too old for Joe. Kind of doing with the 70s. I'm doing some research on UK comics for a book I'm working. That's actually going to be on Kickstarter next month. Robert E. Howard Chronology. And on Volume 4, I'll also talk about all the Conan covers or comics that were in the UK when the weeklies. And you probably don't have any knowledge about or sources of content. But I'm trying to figuring out which ones were the issues of actual Conan comics was easy. All the backups that he was in. I mean, he jumped from one magazine to another, to another, to another. And Grand Comic Book Database doesn't have this information. So I've been trying to buy them online. And wow, that's kind of expensive when, it runs $15 to $25 a book. You can buy a book for $3 or $4, but it'll cost you $25 to get it shipped over here to America.
The shipping is horrible.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
that's my business.
I know. That's why I'm working with you. That's why I'm working with you in this, RJ. Truly, the shipping is just absolute dreck. It's cheaper for me to have stuff printed in the United Kingdom and then send it to RJ and then have him distribute it than it is to print the comics in the United States. But it's still just expensive as hell, and it's like. Oh my God! It's just the overseas thing. I mean, well, it's a challenge now more than ever because of COVID and because of Brexit. It's harder to send stuff out. I mean, it wasn't quite as expensive before, but now it is, and it's like.
And of course, I just got things nailed down to a process that's repeatable. And what happens? Post office comes out and says, "Oh yeah, in August we're changing all our rates." I'm like. Okay, so I got to update all my spreadsheets and tell everybody, next time you do this, it's going to cost a little bit more because the post office is going to take a little bit more.
Post office always goes up on rates.
So how is the Robert E. Howard chronology coming along for you there, Mike? Because I know that you've been.
Well, they've got it on pre-launch right now on Kickstarter. Signing people up so they'll know the day it launches, which is good. I believe
send me the link so I can follow it, please.
Yeah, throw it in the private chat there. We'll talk.
And all right. That's when it goes live, and it's a big project. The other Kickstarter that I just wrapped up, the Cosmic Courtship, that's already all shipped and everything's gone. And
nice, God bless. Good for you. Good for you.
500
that's
packages
great.
out the. The publisher did the packing and I did the labeling, and oh my gosh, I am so tired of creating labels. They came in right after I shipped all my monthly customers. So I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of orders, processing labels and getting them down to the post office. And of course, people at the post office will give me a look like, you again? 'Cause it's more what I get. He doesn't have room in her truck for all those packages. So like, is that all? You mean you got more? You know, like, yeah, I got another one I'm bringing in too. So I'm getting dollies out there with me. So,
well, you want to grab your Edgar Rice Burroughs art chronology again to give people an idea of what the Robert E. Howard art chronology is going to be like, because Rich, if you haven't seen this thing, this is first of all, it's a brick of books.
Well, of course, it's a brick. I'm not surprised.
15 pounds. 3 of these weigh as much
Good
as
gravy.
a bag of concrete.
I could slide that on a weightlifting pole, whatever the frig, a weightlifting
Lethal
bar.
weapon in 5 states.
Jesus, I mean, I could barely do curls with that thing. Good God, that's huge.
Yeah,
God,
so
look at it. Oh, that's gorgeous.
So he reprinted
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
all the Robert E. Howard Tarzans and John Carters in high resolution scans from everything that was ever printed. All the covers.
Oh my word! Really? Oh my God!
And there'll be a pulp issue for the Robert E. Howard, and then
Nicely done. Oh my God, that looks so good.
The second one, and this was taken from the original painting by Frank Frazetta that was hanging on the walls at the Edgar Rice Burroughs studios. The offices out there in Arizona. So this is probably the best reproduction of this Frazetta painting ever made. And so this is all the books. Of course, that's why we'd have Frazetta on the cover. And obviously there's going to be a lot of Frazetta.
We're looking at a blank page there, Mike.
Love it. Oh, I love it. That looks so good. It really does. Wow, man.
So if you like,
I want one. I want one for Christmas.
Books, paperbacks, and hardcovers in the U.S. and the U.K. because I'm including all the U.K. stuff. It's everything in the language of English and that foreign language known as the King's English.
The King's English, yes, it is.
Then
that's beautiful.
3 and 4 will be on the comics. The third one was this one was all about Tarzan, and of course the third one in the Robert E. Howard chronology will be all on the comics, and then do the magazines and all the other characters in the fourth one. And I mean, I give you the entire history of it there.
Oh, look at that! That looks amazing. Are you kidding me?
All the variants.
Oh man, please send me the links so I can take a look, so I can back it. Oh my goodness!
I'm tossing it. It's that one's not one you have to back. That one is actually. I'm putting the link in the private chat first.
Okay, good.
Boom. And then in the regular chat.
Fell.
Sorry, my phone.
Hey, RJ. RJ, it's 2:30 here in the United Kingdom.
We've got to wrap. We've got to wrap. So, all right.
Gentlemen, I really had a lot of fun talking with you guys, and it's really nice. I mean, it's like I said before, I'm on both sides of the fence when it comes to that. I mean, I can understand the younger generation, but the generation that's like mine and a little bit older or something, it's like I gravitate towards that because I was raised that way, and all the stuff that all of you are talking about, I agree 100%, especially when it comes to putting something together like this, because we all have to love it. And if you don't love it, don't effing do it, because you're just taking up space. That's all there is to it, guys. There's something else that someone can be doing or learn how to do it better. Just don't waste anybody else's time. Really.
All right. Rich, thank you for joining us tonight. The chat was
thank you for having me.
Here.
Oh my God.
People were enjoying the discussion. So that's what we're here for. And, to learn new stuff. So, Brian, Michael, appreciate you guys as always showing up here. I know that you guys have things that you could be doing, but, you take time out to be on this show, and I do appreciate it all the time. And everyone in the chat, we don't have a show if you're not here, so we definitely appreciate you guys being here. If you would hit that share button, put Rich's work out in front of more eyeballs, put the links to the LCS guys out in front of more eyeballs, I would appreciate that. That's all I ask. And as always, we just hope you had a blast.